It's one of the most haunting crime scenes Japan has ever known. 4 members of a family, parents and 2 children slaughtered in their home. No signs of forced entry. No clear motive. No eyewitnesses, but the strangest detail: the killer didn't run. He stayed. He made himself tea, ate their food, used their computer. He slept inside the house while the bodies were still there. When police arrived, they uncovered over 16,000 pieces of evidence: blood, fingerprints, DNA, footprints, personal items. They had everything except a suspect. And 24 years later, Japan still has no answers, just a trail of clues that leads nowhere. This is the story of the Setagaya Family Murders, a perfect crime hiding in plain sight. On the night of December 30th, 2000, a Tokyo suburb was quiet. Too quiet. Inside a modest home in Setagaya, just before midnight, an entire family was alive, unaware they were living their final moments. Mikio Miyazawa, 44, worked for a theater company. His wife, Yasuko, was a teacher. Their 2 children, 8-year-old Nina and 6-year-old Ray, were preparing for New Year's with their parents. Just a few feet away, behind thin walls, a killer was already inside. There was no forced entry. No broken locks. Whoever did this either knew how to slip in unnoticed or had already been there. The attack began with little Ray, strangled in his sleep, likely without a sound. Then came Mikio. The father stabbed repeatedly in a desperate fight, his blood trailing across the stairs and walls. The killer used a sashimi knife, which snapped from the violence. So he grabbed another from the kitchen and kept going. Yasuko and Nina tried to flee upstairs. He followed them. Neither survived, but that's not the part that made this case legendary. After the killings, the murderer didn't leave. He used their computer, browsed websites, sent an email, ate their ice cream, drank barley tea, went to the bathroom, left waste behind, and didn't even flush. He made himself at home in the house of the dead, and by the time morning came, the family's bodies had already begun to cool. When relatives arrived hours later, they assumed the Miyazawas were sleeping in. What they found instead was a blood-soaked scene so bizarre, police didn't even know where to begin. There was DNA, footprints, handprints, thousands of clues, but not a single step toward justice. This wasn't just a murder, it was a message, and 24 years later, we still don't know what it meant. The moment police entered the Miyazawa home, they knew this wasn't a typical murder. There wasn't just blood, there was evidence everywhere. Trail of footprints soaked in blood led from room to room. Handprints smeared across walls, half-eaten food in the kitchen, and strangely, a sweater and hip bag left behind, clothing that didn't belong to any of the victims. Inside the bag, police found sand, not ordinary dirt, but grains traced back to a specific beach. In California, combined with DNA tests, investigators began to suspect something strange. The killer may not have been Japanese. His DNA showed a rare combination: East Asian and European markers. He wore a brand of clothing only sold in Korea, and the bag, a limited edition style sold years earlier in Tokyo. Every clue raised more questions. Why would a foreigner target a suburban Japanese family? How did he slip in without anyone noticing? And why did he stick around for hours afterward, eating, drinking, even napping? Some believed he had a mental break. Others speculated a deeper, darker motive, that the killer was part of something larger, a planned execution, maybe even a test that computer activity was especially strange. Files were opened, an email was drafted, unsent. Had he searched for something? Left a message? Police never said in total. Investigators documented over 16,000 pieces of physical evidence, but none of it led to a name. The case became Japan's greatest forensic paradox. Everything was left behind, except the killer himself, and as years passed, the trail that once burned hot went cold, but buried in that mountain of data, sand, sweat, keys, prints, was something the public never saw till recently. The most chilling part of the Setagaya case isn't just how the family died, it's what the killer did after. For at least 5 hours after the murders, someone moved around the house. He accessed the family's computer, he walked to the fridge, opened food containers, microwaved leftovers, he changed clothes putting on the father's jacket. He even treated minor cuts on his hand with bandages from the bathroom cabinet. Nothing was rushed, he may have even slept. But there was something else between 1 a.m. and 10 a.m. Multiple system events were logged on the family's computer. One file was opened, an online form accessed, but no data entered. Internet search history wiped, and an email account opened, but never sent. Who was he trying to contact? That single window of missing time when the killer was alive, awake, and online became the case's most disturbing mystery. Why didn't he run? Why didn't he erase more? Instead, he left everything. DNA, evidence, and silence. What's more chilling is what wasn't found. The police never recovered the original murder weapon. The knife that began the killings was broken left at the scene, but was there another weapon taken with him? And one key item mentioned early in the case quietly disappeared from official reports. A tissue with blood not matching any of the victims or the killer. To this day, no one knows who that blood belonged to. A second person? Another intended target? An accomplice? Investigators stopped commenting, reporters stopped asking, but for those who followed the case closely, this was the moment everything changed, because if someone else was there, then everything we think we know about the Setagaya murders is wrong. As investigators dove deeper into the evidence, public pressure mounted. The media began reporting on the case daily. But behind the scenes, something strange was happening. Key details began disappearing from the official narrative. The tissue with unknown blood, gone. Early interviews with neighbors, redacted, and theories that the killer wasn't acting alone, quietly buried. A retired detective would later say, "We were told to focus only on approved angles." When asked why, he simply replied, "Too many people were watching." In 2001, police released a vague composite sketch based not on witness descriptions, but DNA profiling. It didn't resemble anyone on record. Worse, it only deepened confusion. By then, theories had begun to spiral. Some believed the killer was a foreign national, possibly military, possibly transient. Others believed he was a local drifter, familiar with the neighborhood. Then came a chilling twist. One neighbor claimed they saw someone on the Miyazawa family's balcony 2 days before the murders, a man in dark clothes, staring into the window for hours. That report was never followed up in the main investigation, and another resident mentioned a home invasion 2 weeks prior, just blocks away, where the intruder used the same brand of knife, same method of entry, same silence that lead was ignored the deeper you go into this case. The more it feels like someone wanted it closed, not solved, despite having blood, fingerprints, fibers, clothing, and a precise timeline. No arrests were ever made. One document, leaked years later, included a single line that still haunts investigators. Suspect profile does not align with domestic patterns. But what exactly did that mean? Wrong nationality? Wrong motive? Wrong narrative? In a country known for solving nearly every homicide, this case became the exception Japan doesn't talk about anymore, or maybe was told not to. If this was a random killing, it didn't look like one murder weapons abandoned. Clues left in plain sight. The killer lingered. Left fingerprints, DNA. Footprints. It was almost as if he wanted to be studied, but not found. What if it wasn't about getting away, but about sending a message? That theory took hold in 2003 when an independent journalist unearthed something strange. A former Miyazawa co-worker, now living abroad, had received a letter weeks before the murder. The letter was unsigned, filled with vague warnings, phrases like, "They'll come through the walls," and "too loud to hear it coming." Police never confirmed the letter existed, but the journalist claimed it matched the Miyazawas. Handwriting. Another theory suggested the father, Mikio, had uncovered something at work. His company was involved in a public project harmless on paper, but buried deep in its funding structure was a subcontractor linked to a failed government bid. Coincidence? Maybe, unless this wasn't about revenge, but about a warning to others. What made it even stranger was what the killer brought with him. He left behind a bag containing sand traced to California. But the inside also had tiny plastic fragments, rubber fibers, and trace metal shavings. Forensic analysts said the materials didn't match anything in the home. So where were they from? One theory suggested an industrial facility, another, a military or research base, but no connections were ever made public. If the killer was trained calm under pressure, methodical, he didn't act like a man on the run. He acted like a man who'd done it before, or worse, someone who expected protection in a country where nearly all homicides are solved within days. This one was never meant to be. 24 years later, the Setagaya case is still technically open, but in truth, it's frozen in time. No new leads, no suspect, no motive, just 16,000 pieces of evidence stacked in boxes, archived in silence. Each year, on December 30th, local officers return to the Miyazawa home. They bow outside the gate, place flowers by the fence, and leave quietly. No cameras, no answers, but the internet hasn't forgotten. Every few years, new theories resurface. Theories about military involvement, about shadow agencies, about experiments, biological or psychological, gone wrong. Some even claim the killer was part of a classified psychological warfare program. Others believe he never left the country, just faded into society. Protected, and yet the physical evidence remains. Sand from California, Korean clothing, foreign DNA. A digital trail that ends in silence. Japan's national police agency still lists it as one of the most baffling unsolved murders in their history, but they don't speak about it. In fact, many original files have been sealed indefinitely. Even the family's surviving relatives have stopped giving interviews. Theories multiplied, but something deeper sits beneath them. Why was this family chosen? Why this night? And why leave so much behind? Some believe it wasn't a mistake. that the killer left clues on purpose, that the real message wasn't in what he took, but in what he allowed to be found. Maybe this wasn't just a crime. Maybe it was a demonstration of control, of power, of disappearance in plain sight in a world flooded with noise and surveillance. What kind of killer chooses to be seen but never known?